Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on earth. I'm your host, the GM, and not too awful long ago, I was interviewed on Troy Pacelli's podcast, and the topic of Jayce and the Wheeled Warriors came up. And to my dismay, not a single person, other than myself, of course, remembered Jayce and the Wheeled Warriors. And while I have quite a few friends actually that work in the toy and cartoon industries, I don't know any of the guys who worked on Wheeled Warriors like J. Michael Straczynski or any of them. But just based on the toys themselves, I have always had a really strong suspicion that in the earliest possible incarnation, it was probably going to have a name like Monster Trucks. Because starting from that point of view, that is what ties it all together. That is what makes the insanity that is Jayce and the Wheel Warriors make the most sense. The bad guys in this franchise are trucks and other vehicles who are monsters. And these toys had interchangeable parts. So you could take the wheels off of one and put it on another, and the wheels were all huge. And likewise, the weapons and accessories were all interchangeable as well. And was so often the case in the 1980s, the toys were promoted with some sort of tie-in media. So Mattel asked Deke to do the cartoon. And as cool as the toys were, the animated series just knocked it out of the park, in my opinion. And that is what we based our Wheeled Warrior adventures on. But before we really get into it, hit like, subscribe, and comment. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. So, all that said, let's dive in. The prologue to this one starts with a scientist named Audric, who has a teenage son named Jayce. They both have brown hair with a white stripe down the middle, kind of like Rogue from X-Men. Anyways, Aldrich's specialty is genetic engineering, and he has created a younger sister for Jayce named Flora, who is a lot like Poison Ivy if she was a little girl and had psychic powers. One day, in an effort to fight starvation, Audric begins a new experiment. But just as he succeeded, there's a flash of energy in space, and this bright white light blinded Audric and his short robot assistant, Oon. Cosmic rays flood the lab, and the plants quickly mutated, crawling out of the vessels that had contained them. Plant men had oversized heads and features straight out of a horror movie. So Audric and Oon fled as the vines began to assimilate everything. The plants, at the end of the day, go on to call their leader Saw Boss, and he turns the lab into a throne room of sorts. And together, they cover that first planet, assimilating it and draining all water and minerals from it. Audric goes into hiding and creates a new kind of root. One half of it is a part of a biological weapon that can destroy the monster minds. So Audric puts the root in a necklace and sends Oon to find Jayce and Flora, telling his robot that Jayce is his master now. And then meanwhile, Audric begins to create the second half of the root. And the idea is that when you put them together, it will create a weapon, this ultimate weapon that is going to destroy the bad guys. Which brings us to the main plot. When Un does find Jayce and Flora hanging out with a character named Gillian, who, by the way, was heavily inspired by Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that he is an elderly space wizard. Jayce himself is a Luke Skywalker analog, which I guess makes Flora kind of like a younger Princess Leia, but instead of Leia's famous haircut, Flora's red hair is always in pigtails. Anyway, so Un gives Jayce the root necklace, and Gillian says Jayce must find his father, unite the roots, and defeat the monster minds. Jayce asks how he's supposed to do that. So the old wizard gives Jayce power ring that has omni power. Gillian tells Jayce that in ages past, there was a small band of adventurers who protected people in ancient times, and they were called the Lightning League, and their leader wore this ring. Gillian says the Lightning League is now reborn with Jayce as its leader, and Jayce is humbled by this. And Gillian tells him that the ring has more power than Jayce can imagine, but only if his heart and purpose are pure. So Sawboss uses his own psychic powers to scry and search for the root necklace, and he sees Jayce in his vision. So he orders his henchmen to kill the boy and destroy the root. So they try to break through the force field. Gillian is working on a group of vehicles. So Jayce gets in the cockpit of one of the more aerodynamic ones that is called Armed Force, which has a golden robotic claw arm on the top. And Jayce says that he plans to engage the monster minds in combat. But Gillian, who built Armed Force, says he hasn't finished the lasers yet, so it has no functional weapons. The monster minds try to penetrate the barrier but can't, so they back off while Gillian watches and tells Jayce that it's wise only to fight when absolutely necessary. But the vines slowly crawl over the top of the dome, blocking out more and more sunlight. So the solar-powered force field won't hold out forever. Jayce asks if Gillian can build a spaceship that they can use to escape. But the old man says he can't do it in what time they have left. So Gillian instead uses his sorcery power. He senses a nearby starship, which, by the way, is shaped like a sailing ship, but its sails are solar sails, and he causes a gadget on board the ship to break, forcing it to land for repairs. As the ship heads for the force field, Jayce says it will crash, but Gillian assures him that the force field only works against evil creatures. The man who owns the ship, which, by the way, is called the Pride of the Skies 2, is a Han Solo analog who has long black hair pulled into a ponytail. His name is Herc Stormsailor, and he asks the heroes if they happen to have the part that he needs. Gillian subs sorcery for fabricate and creates the part and gives it to Herc. Jayce asks Herc to take them with him, and Herc says that's what he does for a living. He'll take anything and anyone, anywhere for a price. So Gillian uses fabricate to make some gold, which he gives to Herc. The heroes and their many vehicles are taken up a colossal ramp into a huge cargo bay of the starship. The heroes even have an AT-AT like vehicle called Trailblazer that acts kind of like a car carrier, and that smaller vehicles can be, carried around on its back. So the fact that this thing fits inside the cargo bay of the ship tells you a lot about what you should be kind of imagining here. This thing's just huge. The only thing that doesn't fit is called Battle Base, and it's like a massive cube on tank treads, and it is stored on top of the rear of the ship. While moving equipment, Herc sets a metal crate down on top of a flower, so Flora freaks out, moves the crate, and asks the flower if it's okay, since she herself is a plant. Herc sees this and says, "Man, that kid is strange." Finally, it's time to blast off, and the monster mines attack. So everyone fights them in the Lightning League vehicles that are completed now. And the metal vehicles, as one would probably expect, do a better job in terms of protecting against damage. The plants are way easier to hurt with a metal blade, while plant-based spike ball or something hits metal, and the metal holds up pretty well in battle. Jayce pilots armed force, Flora uses drill sergeant, Gillian drives quick draw, Herc uses spike trike. And together they destroy the monster mines here, then head into space where they begin their search for Jayce's father, Audric. They have many adventures together, so many that it would become tedious if I told you about them all. They end up in total searching about 6 dozen worlds before finally encountering the original Lightning League. Jayce is finally reunited with his father, Audric, on their way to go get the other half of the route where Audric hid it. Audric, unfortunately, is killed in an ambush by the monster mines. Jayce finds the other piece of the route, unites the two pieces, and inserts them into a network of vines that use the dimension travel portals. The idea here is that when they assimilated one world, they couldn't spread anymore. So Sawboss was forced to open these portals to other planets, and then they would go through the portals stay open the whole time, and they go through all these portals and they assimilate whatever planet they come to, right? But all of the routes on all of these worlds are all connected. It all goes back to that lab where they were first created. So the super weapon that Jayce has now, the two pieces of root that have been merged into one, when he puts that into the root network between worlds, right? It acts like an invasive species, and it assimilates the monster mines vines, killing them. The old Lightning League then trains the new Lightning League, and both teams are recruited by Harbinger during the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So they're brought to Earth where they fight shadow demons using their special vehicles. But Sawboss left a small piece of himself behind on the Pride of the Skies 2, and it infects Herc Stormsailor. So Herc becomes Sawboss 2. Jayce forces the ship down at the North Pole, where Herc / Sawboss manages to land it safely. Jayce then uses his power ring to blast the mechanism that lowers and raises the massive door to the cargo bay, letting in the cold Arctic air. So Herc Sawboss freezes solid. He's not really dead, but he's not alive enough to grow vines and assimilate the earth either. So it's almost, the ending there is almost like John Carpenter's The Thing, in a way. At any rate, so Jayce worries that the vehicles may have microscopic spores or something else along those lines, in that they weren't destroyed because they were not touching that vine network when he used the root. So the vehicles are left in the cargo bay with the ramp down in the cold to deter any potential plant growth. And that brings us to the epilogue. Since there are no more plants for Jayce and Flora to fight, And the Lightning League is stuck on Earth now that the Monitor is dead, and the heroes decide to fight crime and do what they can to make their adopted world a better place. So, using his power ring and Flora's various powers, the Lightning League fights crime throughout the remaining years of the 1980s and all of the 1990s, even into the early 2000s. The vehicles, by the way, are still parked at the North Pole, untouched for all these years. And Jayce, interestingly enough, became very popular with our female players. And as such, he got hit on all the time in our game, no matter who was playing. He eventually married a woman named Veronica, who's the daughter of Kara Zor-El and Superman Red, making Superman Red Jayce's father-in-law. Together, the two of them used white kryptonite to kill some more plant-based villains that showed up later. But that's a story for another day. I started running Jayce and the Wheel Warriors back around 2005, and I was a little surprised by how much my players enjoyed playing it. What started off as a one-shot snowballed into an ongoing campaign that lasted for a couple of years. And Jayce in particular was really popular in our game and even featured in dozens of other games that had nothing to do with the Wheeled Warriors. So yeah, our players really liked this. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing about our adventures. If so, as always, we'd love it if you took a moment to hit like, check to see if you're still subscribed, and leave us a comment. From all of us here at the longest running superhero role-playing game on Earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.